Today we're going to talk about updates regarding New Zealand immigration and what are the options for those visa holders who are already here in New Zealand and those from overseas. Hello everyone, it's me, Nursai. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about updates regarding New Zealand immigration.
That's right.
New Zealand immigration and what are the options for those visa holders who are already here in New Zealand and those from overseas. So without further ado, let me introduce you my good friend, my immigration advisor, Cristian Montofre.
Hey Sarah, nice to see you again. We're back here. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for giving me this second chance again to do this Q&A. So could you please introduce yourself to our viewers and give them a little background about your company?
Okay, so my name is Cristian or Cristian. I am originally from Chile and I have been in New Zealand over 30 years. I am a chartered accountant and licensed immigration advisor. I am the director or one of the founders of Abroad Global. We're an immigration education and training consultancy here based in Auckland, New Zealand. And Sarah has been one of our clients, and not long ago she got her residency visa approved.
Yes. Yep. Thank you. Right, so let's talk about student visa, Cristian.
Yeah.
So those who are already here in New Zealand, so what can you say about the student visa?
Yeah. Okay, so for those of you who are already in New Zealand and you hold, let's say, a visitor visa or a student visa, right? So Sarah and I were talking that your options while you're in New Zealand is to continue to study, obviously, and as long as you're a genuine student and you meet the requirements for a student visa and the course requirements, then you have that option to continue your studies here in New Zealand while you're inside the country. Yeah. Okay, so that's option still available for many students and professionals that want to upskill or they want to they've had a change of circumstances as well.
But those from overseas, can they apply for student visa or?
Okay, so for those that are based overseas, let's look at the two types of studies that most people want to come to New Zealand to study. One of them is English language courses, and the other one is tertiary studies or upskilling either through a diploma, bachelor degree, or a master's degree or PhD. Okay, so at the moment, if you're based offshore, and let's say you applied for a student visa to come here and do a master's degree or PhD before the lockdown and the COVID-19 pandemic took place, then you possibly will have the opportunity to be within those 250 people or students who will be allowed to come in next year to complete your studies at postgraduate level or PhD. Okay, so the numbers have been capped by the New Zealand government for students who had the student visa approved before the pandemic and all this took place. And then basically depending on who you study with and also the level, PhD or postgraduate, you may be within those 250 people who get referred to be able to come back to the country and continue your studies in 2021. Okay?
Right.
If you are, let's say, somebody who has the intentions to study, you don't hold a student visa at the moment and you're offshore, then basically what Immigration New Zealand and the government has done is that, they've closed the borders. And unfortunately, student visas aren't being processed if you're looking to study at the moment or even next year. Ourselves, we've got clients, just to give you an example, we've got clients that have decided to wait and apply pre-COVID-19, and Immigration New Zealand is leaving those applications as the last in terms of priority. Okay, so for people that want to study who are based overseas, you basically have the option either to wait until the borders open, because study is not a critical purpose as far as we know for which you would be allowed to come here and go under managed isolation and all that.
Awesome. Thank you. That's very informative.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, next, let's talk about essential skills work visa. Those who are here, who have visa extended until March 2021. So what is their next step?
Okay, so the next step is to go back in time and identify first when your visa, which is likely to be low skill if you're going to be subject to the stand down period, when that was granted. Okay, that's the number one thing you got to do. Then from there, work forward to see when you're going to get close to the 3 years, right? And also, depending on what you do, then what you need to consider is discussing with your advisor or with Immigration New Zealand the option to apply for an extension, right? Or the option to look at how you can go from a low skill to a pay above the medium wage, which is 25.50 50 cents per hour, because that changes your circumstances in terms of the remuneration that you receive, which may allow somebody who's subject to that rule, the stand down period, to apply for a new work visa, subject to conditions being satisfied, obviously, under essential skills, to then be granted a visa which could possibly be for 3 years or more.
Okay, so for example...
Sorry, for 3 years. You got to do that.
Okay. Okay, so for example, they cannot reach the medium pay rate scale.
Yeah.
So they will remain in low scale. So they, after this March 2021 extension, they need to go home.
Well, before you decide you need to go home, okay, you need to do what I sort of suggested, is that this identify when the visa was granted and look at the time, because just because it's been extended to March doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be subject to the stand down period. That's why it's very important that you go back in time, identify when that low skilled work visa under essential skills was granted, so then you can talk to immigration and ask them the question, will I be subject to the stand down, or do I qualify to apply for another essential skills work visa, which would be for 6 months? And why do I say that? Because once you ask them, then you will have confirmation from immigration that what they're telling you is accurate. But then when you talk to your advisor or your lawyer, you look for the technical rule that will support that, so that then you can actually make an informed decision. Okay, so that's the best way to tackle this scenario, because then you're getting information that's accurate and precise, so that you make a decision whether to leave, or if you got aspirations to study, then you can study if it's genuine aspirations to do that. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Cristian. Okay, now let's talk about partnership visa. Those who are holding, let's talk about first those who have work visa, who are already here, and then their partner is lives overseas.
Yeah.
So can they sponsor their partner during this pandemic?
Okay, so how it works for, let's say, for the partner who has a work visa, right?
Yes.
And the partner is outside, but the partner has not held a previous work visa as the partner of a worker. Okay. In that scenario, what immigration has told us, and that we've discussed with some of our clients, is that, depending on where you're from, and if you're from a visa waiver country, for example, you may have the option to apply for a request for travel for a critical purpose, to be reunited with your partner who ordinarily lives in New Zealand and works in New Zealand. But essentially, until you get invited to apply for that partnership-based visa, which would be a critical purpose and would be a visitor visa most likely, then you will know which conditions you have to satisfy so that they approve that visa, so you can be reunited with your partner in New Zealand. Okay?
Is it different rule applies to those who have work visa and those who are resident or citizen
so
here?
In terms of traveling to New Zealand, the same rule applies. If you, let's say, have a critical reason or purpose to travel to New Zealand, what Immigration New Zealand is explaining to everybody, and what we tell clients as well, is that you first got to request the permission or apply for a request for travel, right? When you do that application, it'll list the critical purpose that applies to you personally, right? And once you've sent that, Immigration New Zealand, what they do, they go through this expression of interest type of process, where then, if they agree with your critical purpose, they will invite you to apply for the visa that is relevant to your circumstances and for which you applied to be invited. And once you do that, then immigration will look at all the evidence that is required to satisfy that visa, and then they will let you travel to New Zealand, because they will approve a visa that allows for that.
So they need to be invited by the immigration.
Yeah. So that's how it's for many people that are offshore, who are partners, or who actually went back home for a holiday before the lockdown, like let's say in December. So they have to follow this process and be very diligent, because essentially, and also keep trying. If you do believe that you have genuine reasons, and you do have at least a humanitarian reason to come back to New Zealand, it's because most of these processes are automatic, or they appear to be automatic, but they get done relatively quickly. And immigration may say, no, we're not going to invite you 1, 2, or 3 or 4 times, and they may say, yes, we'll invite you, the 5th time that you apply. So it's not that they don't want you to come back. It's just it's a managed process around the border that it's been closed. So they can't let thousands of people return at one time, because border isolation and managed isolation won't cope. So they have to do it by numbers, very slowly and very strategically as well.
Yeah, be patient, guys.
Yeah, but sorry, just to answer your question, Sarah. Also, so if you are a partner of a worker who is in New Zealand, but you already had the partnership-based visa before you left, and now you're stuck overseas, different rules apply slightly, which again, you apply for that request for travel. You provide the proof that your partner is in New Zealand, he or she works, and then you've also lived in New Zealand with your partner before you went away and you got left outside New Zealand. Okay?
Yeah, awesome. Okay, next, let's talk about expression of interest to apply for residency.
Okay, so for the skilled migrant category, as many of you know, the selection of expressions of interest have been frozen or put on hold for some time. We've had discussions with Immigration New Zealand about this, and one of the questions that arises is, well, can I still send my expression of interest? So what they said to us, and what was communicated with clients, is that the answer is yes, you can, because you pay to send it. Now, the responsibility to send accurate and genuine or truthful information, it's always at the hands of the migrant who sends the expression of interest, right? And essentially what happens is that it just sits there waiting until the selection process opens up again, and immigration will select, review, and then decide whether they invite people to apply for the skilled migrant category residency visa. And what they told us is that basically, if you do have 160 points, or you believe that you may have or qualify with 160 points or more, they're not saying no. What they're doing is, we're not inviting you yet, because we got too many applications. We want to get through some of them, and we're going to put this process on hold. And once we start selecting, then we'll invite people who we agree that they have 160 points or more to apply for the skilled migrant category residency visa. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's not on hold anymore. They can submit their expression of interest application.
No. So what's on hold is the selection process and the invitation. But what is being permitted by Immigration New Zealand is you can actually pay them and submit the expression of interest. What's not happening is that they're not selecting, which is different from submitting the application. Okay?
That's right, yeah.
So, and if you're inside New Zealand and you've meet the requirements in your view, then immigration's leaving it up to the people, to the migrants, to decide, well, I want to submit it now, or I'm going to wait to see what happens in the future. Okay?
Right. Okay. Next. So can you elaborate more about critical purpose visitor visa?
Could I elaborate more? Okay. So the critical purpose visa, or I guess it's not a visa. Like we were talking about the partners before. So if you have a critical purpose to travel to New Zealand, then you got to select which purpose it is. So what Immigration New Zealand has put on their website is that they've said, well, who doesn't need to request permission to travel back to New Zealand? For example, I myself am a New Zealand citizen, so if I was outside before the lockdown and all these things happened, before the border closed, I don't need permission to come back, right? Because I'm a New Zealand citizen, right? Then you have the likes of workers that left New Zealand but have to come back, or they want to come back. So for those people, then there are critical purposes to come back, right? So if you go through the Immigration New Zealand website, then you look at those purposes, and if one of them applies to your circumstances, then you have the option to apply for a request for travel for them to let immigration know, well, this is my critical purpose, please consider my circumstances, and then they will invite you to apply for that specific type of visa, okay, because it's a specific type of visa. There's also a critical purpose or a purpose which is related to critical health workers, right? So if you're invited, then again you have to satisfy those requirements, because New Zealand is a country we're experiencing shortages of healthcare workers, or in the healthcare system, in the healthcare sector, we are experiencing shortages, right?
Yeah.
So if you're that sort of professional person who holds that qualification or experience, then you may be able to satisfy that. But even before applying for a critical purpose visa under that category, you need to request Immigration New Zealand to invite you. Okay, so that's the sort of process that they are telling everybody to follow.
I'm thinking, Cristian, so for example, I'm a nurse in the Philippines, and then I want to apply for critical purpose reason to get the visa. So do they need to have employer here to support their visa?
Well, if you're, let's say you're overseas and I run a clinic, and you apply for a job and I want you to come and work for me, right? Okay, so I follow the standard processes of employment law, human resource. I give you an employment agreement, an offer, you accept it, you sign it. So that's one part. So then what happens is that you need to decide, well, how do I travel to New Zealand? So we go back to what we were just talking about, where you request the permission to travel, because then you get to explain to Immigration New Zealand, this is my reason or my purpose. Get it? So that's how they wanna manage it, because they're not accepting applications directly, because even if you try to apply and if you're offshore, it's going to ask you for a specific invitation to apply number, or they're going to ask for a reference number, and if you don't have it, if you don't provide it, then it won't allow you to continue. Or even if it allows you to continue, they most likely will decline it and tell you, look, you got to request a permission to travel first so that we can invite you. So it's still possible. Let's just say you need to follow the steps and not go over a step when it's actually required.
Right, understood. Okay, so for example, I am granted with the work visa, and then I live overseas. So I need to come here. I need to do the isolation process for 14 days. Do I need to pay the?
As far as I know, yes, you do. Unless, well, it depends. There are categories, or there are processes where you can ask for a waiver, but my understanding is that you do have to pay, or if your employer is committed to paying for that cost of the managed isolation, then Immigration New Zealand will consider it, and obviously it has to be paid.
Yes,
okay?
Because it costs $3,100
$3,100 for the isolation for one person.
Yes. Okay, so I think we're done, Cristian.
Yeah?
Yeah. So
well, I hope it makes sense. If you got questions, just email us.
Ask Cristian. You can email me. I will write my email address here. Any more advice? Some more advice for them?
Advice, I guess, what I'll tell you is observations that I can make and from what I'm seeing. So the most important thing here is that if you are in New Zealand, and if your visa is about to expire, let's say in a few months, is that you talk to the right people about making an informed decision, and you look at every viable option that you have, and as long as you're working with the truth, then move forward with the option that has the less risk, which you can manage. Okay? And that includes also that process of making the decision is talking to Immigration New Zealand, like I was saying before. Okay? For those of you who are offshore, be very careful with education agents. Please, and this applies to everybody offshore, because education agents do not necessarily have a good understanding of the complexity of how complex immigration law and instructions are, because immigration law it's specific to migration, different to studying or paying for a course which may be suitable to your intention to continue your career or starting your career in New Zealand, right? Because even if you have the genuine intentions to study, you may not get your visa approved, especially now with COVID-19. Okay, and also whilst the borders remain closed. Okay, so it's very important that your education agent works with an immigration advisor or lawyer in New Zealand, so that you get information, so that you don't have to spend right up front when you could actually wait a little bit until things change in New Zealand. Okay, so the other thing is that we're telling people to work with the truth, meaning that even if you've made a mistake that's not intentionally done to mislead immigration or anything like that, immigration understands that we all make mistakes, we're all human, as long as you explain and act quickly. And that's why it's very important to talk to them and also talk to your advisor or your lawyer in terms of making decisions when you're in New Zealand. And if somebody tells you that things will be fine, knowing that one mistake could cost you your entire stay here, it's better to fix the mistake or not do it, because Immigration New Zealand are forgiving at times, but essentially they don't like it when you don't tell them the truth.
That's true. Yeah. It's easy to process your visa if you're working along with the truth. You know, like you don't need to hide anything. Anyway, guys, if you need help or for visa application, Cristian has helped me for long years now, since 2017, together with his awesome team. So with my essential skills work visa until I got my resident visa, AbroadNZ, Cristian and the whole team has helped me to process everything. So if you want help as well, feel free to message me in this email address, and then I will help you to coordinate appointment with Cristian, because Cristian is a very busy person.
And if you want us to do another video touching on very specific points that maybe today we didn't touch on,
let us know in the comment section below.
Maybe I didn't explain myself well. Let us know. We can do another one, or we can do something specific for our group. So more than happy to share information and help you make an informed decision.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much, Cristian.
No, thank you.
Thank you, guys. I hope this video helps you, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.